Well, in many ways, the COP27 climate summit in November was yet another disappointment. Critics have described it as the moment when the dream of keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius officially died. But this year's summit did bring a breakthrough agreement on so-called loss and damage. It's a funding scheme for the nations most vulnerable to the irreversible effects of climate change. For more, Ineza Umuhoza Grace joins us now for Perspective. She's a self-described ecofeminist and also conducts research on loss and damage in developing nations. Ineza, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great. Thank you. So you're from Rwanda, Ineza. What have the effects of climate change looked like there?
So Rwanda is a small country located in Africa, and we did less to contribute to the greenhouse gas emission, but we are the forefront of experiencing the negative impact of climate change. So for us, effects such as intensive rainfall, flooding, erosion, landslide, and drought are what are very common. And for example, in 2020, when the world was we're all in lockdown because of the pandemic, our community has to be faced challenges such as to be moved from one location to another in the middle of the night because intensive rainfall that was in 2020 was very intense. And this kind of events led us to lose almost 4,000 hectares of land. And for us, when we say that we are losing 4,000 hectares of land, we are meaning that we are losing one of the major economic contributor for our country, which is agriculture. And for instance, most of the farmers are women that are located in the rural area. So we are saying that more women are being pushed out to be on the extreme poverty line. And our country is being also putting on the fact that we are not able to raise our GDP because agriculture is being vulnerable in a sense.
Ineza, is the Rwandan government making any major moves to tackle the effects of global warming that you just described?
Yes, because our country, even if we are the smallest in a sense, but we do have great ambition. Because, for example, we have we have one program that was meant to move the community from a flood-prone area. Because for the estimation, it was found out that those areas, the community are going to lose their infrastructure, but most importantly, their life. So our government work with partners to move the community in a new neighborhood where they're going to be much more safer. And we also have a project that is meant to restore our wetland because we understand because we are a country of thousand hills, so we can rely much more on wetland in the manner of protecting us from flooding. So we, for the first exercise, was to move all industrialized area from the wetland in Kigali and then the neighborhood region, so that the wetland can be able to be restored. And we also have a restored wetland in Kigali, which is the Nyandugu Wetland Park. And now it's officially one of the park that is in Kigali, so which also making to have an exercise that you can restore your planet and you can restore the vulnerability of your community, but at the same time ensuring that we are able to preserve our biodiversity and also making money, because I think people are going to come to visit and people are going to come and learn at the same time. So those are the three that I can think on now.
What about loss and damage, Ineza? In my understanding, there's no internationally agreed upon definition of the term. So because you've done research on it, how do you define it?
So yes, there's no proper definition, but for me, I define loss and damage as the negative impact of climate change that are being experienced right now. So that is, for example, if we are looking on how the community are going to adapt for the climate change, people understand adaptation, but loss and damage is what go beyond adaptation. Because if you're losing your heritage, your culture, or your life or even your mental health, those are the aspects that you cannot adapt to. So those are really lost already. And that's how I can define it. And for me, I feel like it has two components, which I think most of the people agree on. So loss and damage can have both non-economic losses, and they can also have economic losses. So we tend to think that the economic losses are the one that is really major in a sense, but when you look clearly, the non-economic losses, like the loss of biodiversity, the loss of the well-being of the community, and the loss of culture, are much more profound. They also need to be recognized.
So how do you, it's a great point that you make there, Ineza, because while the economic losses are a little bit easier to quantify, things like cultural heritage, biodiversity, or even obviously the loss of life are things that seem quite difficult to measure and then to quantify in terms of finding an appropriate response. As a researcher, how do you do that?
So that is really a hard question, but I'll try to answer. But I'm from the Loss and Damage Issues Coalition, and part of the thing on how we try to approach this is, first of all, is to advocate for this gap. So the gap to understand that when we want the world to take concrete action on loss and damage, we need the full scope of loss and damage. Yes, the finance facility is good, but we also want to look on what is going to be beyond the facility. So we need to create a more resilient community by allowing the frontline community to be the one to draft solutions. Because we understand that if you let the community draft the solution, especially those who are marginalized, they're going to be able to tap into the effect that we tend to overlook. Like for example, they'll be able to tap into their knowledge, their land knowledge, and their community knowledge in providing the solution. So those are the factors that we try to put forward. But again, I'm still new and we're still learning. So it's a learning by doing, because even we started our activity in 2020, and I did my first research this year. So I'm still learning and ready to learn again.
And we will be ready to hear more responses, Ineza, as you learn.